Συνεχίζουμε το συνέδριό μας με το Fireside Chat με τίτλο και θεματική το Continuing the Diversity Journey of an Inclusive, Innovative and Sustainable European Union Space. Και εδώ πέρα θα θέλαμε να πούμε δύο λόγια. Είναι πολύ μεγάλη χαρά για μας και πάρα πολύ μεγάλη τιμή που βρίσκεται μαζί μας σήμερα στο συνέδριο μία γυναίκα με πολύ σπουδαία ιστορία και εμπειρία στο κομμάτι και στο χώρο του diversity. Μία γυναίκα που ταξίδεψε από την Ισπανία για να βρίσκεται σήμερα μαζί μας. Είναι η κυρία Μύρθα Καζάνοβα, που είναι πρόεδρος του Ευρωπαϊκού Ινστιτούτου Διαχείρισης της Διαφορετικότητας. Την προσκαλούμε με μεγάλη μας χαρά και πολύ μεγάλη τιμή στη σκηνή, μαζί με τον κύριο Γιάννη Μούτσιο, που είναι δημοσιογράφος και πολύ αγαπημένος μας συνεργάτης.
Right, hello to all of you. It's a pleasure being here today with you. I'm Yanni Moutsios, and it's actually the second time that I'm taking part in this conference, so it's a great pleasure, and I would like to thank you very much to the organizers for actually inviting me here. But it's even a greater pleasure because we have with us Ms. Myrtha Kazanova. She is a pioneer in the diversity policies. She is the person that we all owe the policies and the implementation of them into the corporations, in the organizations, as well as in the European Union. So, first of all, let me just welcome you here to Greece. It's a great pleasure to have you here in this diversity forum, and I think we're going to have a very constructive discussion.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It doesn't hear?
Slightly closer. Yeah, it's open. Yeah, there you go.
So, thank you so much for inviting me. For me, it's a reward to see you all here, to see how Greece has developed into a very forceful organization promoting diversity and inclusion. So for me, it's a great reward to be here after having been in the birth of the diversity charters with DG5 and the project that developed between 2006, 2008, 2009, and on, continuing the diversity journey, it was called. And now it is a reality. We have diversity charters all over Europe to help in the integration of a very diverse union that if it is integrated, if it is respected, its different skills and its different talents and its different contributions, is a very innovative area in the world, and therefore it will guarantee its sustainability.
Well, first of all, we need to tell to our audience and our friends over here that you were actually the founder, and you're still the founder, of the European Institute for Diversity Management. This has actually been one of the crucial bodies that were assisting the European Union to form all those policies about the diversity. But before we even move to the policies, we just need to define what diversity means, because if you look around, we're all so different. We share some common thoughts and values and maybe traits, but we also have different views of the world. We think different. So where does diversity come in the organization, as well as what exactly diversity is according to your own title?
May I go back to the scientific world?
And so, yeah.
Thank you very much. The scientific community in the 70s of last century stated that diversity, with capital letter, was going to be the identificator of the 21st century. Then it said that diversity is the creator of conflicts, whether national, international, or personal. But if it's leveraged, if its differences are leveraged, it becomes the greatest source of innovation. That's the basic message that the scientific community sent. And it was immediately addressed by the American corporate world, which created a panel in which Fortune 500 companies in the United States participated and advanced from managing peoples in the organization by segmenting peoples and addressing their differences and separating their differences, to doing the contrary, to including all the differences and leveraging their contributions, and therefore create a very innovative environment. Now, Europe, let's say, bought this idea in the early century, in 2000, and the European Directive 5, General Directive 5, made the declaration in the 2000 that every citizen of Europe, regardless their diversity, their diverse differences, had the right to work, to promote, to manage their conciliation of personal and private life, regardless their diverse traits of gender, ethnicity, religion, belief, disability, sexual orientation, capabilities, abilities, personal family status, etc. So diversity is the entire range of differences that a person has. The humanity, the nature of humanity is diverse.
Closer, slightly closer.
Yes, it's men and women, but men and women have diverse cultures, diverse ethnicities, diverse beliefs, diverse status, diverse education, diverse capabilities, diverse beliefs, and an entire range of diverse features which make that people make different decisions, different contributions, behave in a different way. And that is what has to be leveraged. That is, it has to be accepted, the differences, and then leverage the contributions. And this is basically the policy of managing diversity.
Now, having defined diversity, though, it means that this actually brings something into the organization, the work that the way that it operates, it works. So, if you could actually find out and tell us what the advantages are for including people coming from different walks of life, from different cultures, how can a corporation or an organization benefit from diversity?
Well, the organization benefits from diversity because then it is sustainable. For example, I'm going to give you an example of what a very important company in Spain, Cluster, used to do. Cluster operated in 20 countries, so it made sure that it had people from those 20 countries. Whether one was in accounting and the other one in logistics, or the other one was a scientific or a physicist, that really didn't matter. What mattered was the capability of that person for their job, and then the diverse features those persons have to be able to connect the company with the 20 cultures they worked with.
Isn't that a problem, though, because if you have all these people coming from different cultures, that means that they need to actually find a single way to communicate with each other, to connect, to understand each other. So wouldn't that be a hindrance? Wouldn't that be an obstacle in getting the policy of the organization and obviously just moving ahead?
Exactly. So, for example, in this case, when Cluster had a project of mobile telephone installations in Russia, for example, in the working group of the project, people from Russia participated. Even if they worked in another department, they participated to what? To be sure that the colors were correct, that the message was correct, that it connected with the culture of the country, with introducing the language of the country if necessary, so that the project of a scientific project was impregnated with the culture of the country it was destined to. And this can only do it the people from that country, or the people with the diverse traits that the project needs, whether it's a project oriented for a sexual orientation or a project oriented for disability or for any other type of diversity. You have to include people of diverse traits in the company, and what we have to be sure is that the workforce of any company is diverse, because people, we are all diverse. Diversity is the main trait of humanity.
Well, we can actually think about it. We are all part of a family, but we're all different.
We're all different.
We're actually forced to live with each other and accept each other as well. The thing is, what type of mechanism do you think that needs to be in place in order for these different cultural backgrounds or even any other traits to work together? Because it's not always easy to actually put things together, put all people together, and just make them work as a unified entity.
Exactly. So there are mechanisms that have to be set in place to create an inclusive environment. You just can't say we are going to be inclusive from now on. You have to create the mechanisms to make this happen. There has to be a constant awareness program so that people in the organization understand the differences with one another and leverage the positive contributions that they do with meetings, with case stories and things. We have to review, according to the objective of the organization, which are the traits that the human resources have to have. If we are the country is going to go into 5 new countries, it is important to have people from all those countries. First, you select them on the basis of their capability, but then you select them also on the basis of the diverse feature they bring in. In this case, you need people from different organizations, or because of the trait or the characteristics of your product, you need people from different beliefs and for different type of behaviors. And you have to connect with the diverse traits of your clients and the diverse traits of your suppliers, because companies do not start and end in their walls. They start with the supplier and end when your consumer has consumed the product or the service and is ready to consume it again. So you have to review your way of selecting. Do not select always in the same source. You have to review the way of integrating so that people can integrate socially and professionally, be accepted with their way of doing, with their differences, and leverage with their recognition and the talent they can offer to the organization. You have to reward people not only with money, but people are rewarded with other things that they prefer. Not everybody.
Such as, I mean, money and physical reward may be one of the benefits that these people may enjoy, but when it comes to an organization, a company, for example, there needs to be an incentive, there needs to be a motive, both for those who actually being bullied, if you like, because of their the diverse background, or because of those who enforce bullying to the others. So how do you find this thin line between legitimizing something and enforcing a policy?
Well, there generally is a department that is created to allow the people to come and express their problems if they have in their organization, in including, in being rejected, or in their way of being participating in the organization. And that group helps to include their persons by giving them support of monitors and of volunteers in the organization that helps them integrate into their groups. So there are mechanisms to do that. But we have to understand that not everybody wants to be rewarded in the same way. There are people that want to be rewarded with recognition. There are other people that want to be rewarded with money. There are other people that want to be rewarded by representing the company in another place or having free time to develop more knowledge and more learning and more.
So, if I understand correctly, essentially the organization, the HR department, or the hierarchy needs to accommodate every single employee's needs in order to have a successful diversity policy applied within the organization?
Well, it is important to understand the traits of the persons that made up the workforce, which is diverse. You don't only depend on bringing new people in. Your workforce is already diverse because it's made out of people. And then decide which are the faculties, which are the advantages, which are the contributions that those persons can contribute to, and make it open for people to be able to give their contributions and not hold their suggestions behind and try to fit into a normal, let's say, standardized company culture. You have to open to new suggestions and to new, because talented people want companies that are open, that allow them to contribute and to be part and belong to an organization. Somebody that goes into an organization to make a living and dedicate 8 hours of their lives and they don't like it, they simply cannot be efficient.
So one size doesn't fit all, if I can just put it in simple words. You need to find the exact policy, the exact traits of every single employee in order to make this work, correct?
Yes, and that, it raises all by itself. If a person belongs to an organization, it's obvious and evident what he or she can contribute. And another very important aspect of diversity and inclusion corporate management is measuring. When you do create a program, whether it is in recruiting, in integration, in client service, or in whatever program you create to leverage your diversity and become more efficient and innovative, that you have to measure. You have to understand what is the objective you wanted to create that project for, and then you measure it. As Shell always says, what we cannot do, we do. What we cannot measure, we do not do. And they're very wise people.
However, if you cannot really measure the effectiveness of your policy, how do you know that this is actually working? Because it needs to have both qualitative as well as quantitative methods and results.
Exactly.
So you just need to put in a formula that will actually tell you whether what you do is right or wrong, and then just try to shoot it again in order to find the right formula.
Exactly. What you measure are the projects, not the policy. The policy is the entire policy of the organization to introduce diversity and inclusion mechanisms. What you then measure is the result of those projects that create those mechanisms to, for example, have a higher and more efficient relation with the clients. If you want to sell more to clients, then you have to prepare your people to match their diverse needs, to match their diverse attitude, and then create a program to have that integration and that relation with the new relation with the clients, and then measure the result of before and after you set up that project. So there are projects that are set up within the company policy, and those projects can be measured one by one.
Now, we've all been living in a global village for, I would probably say, the last 30 years. My question, though, lies in the European Union. Though it is supposed to be a union, we all come from different cultural backgrounds. We don't share necessarily the same history. We all have different social as well as economic levels and backgrounds. Why do you think that the European Union has taken so long to actually apply and maybe adopt this kind of diversity policies? Because, you know, we're not one of a kind. We just have many different cultures.
Well, that's the basic reason why it has taken a longer time than in the United States. That is a very diverse population. As you know, they don't have a common history. They have a common history only 300 years ago, maybe, and they have been building their history from then. But we have a long history of many countries and many peoples that have been in conflict for many thousand years. And now it's a miracle, and a wonderful miracle, that the European Union is made up of 27 very different cultures that have common issues, common objectives, and commonalities that are definitely moving them into creating a very powerful European Union. And therefore, what comes up is the contributions that each, from their diverse perspective, cultures and training, can contribute to make a very innovative European Union that is going to be, if we keep on trying to do this, very, very sustainable.
Allow me to use an example which is very current. For the last almost 8 months, we've been living in a turmoil of the war between Ukraine and Russia. So if you were an employer, a company, that employed people from both countries, Ukraine and Russia, they may have some similar traits because they used to belong to the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union. But how do you put this together? How do you just try to make them work together, accept each other, and of course, what kind of effect would that have in the operation of the organization itself? Because there seems to be a conflict there, which can actually be escalated and works even worse when we have these kind of people together.
Yes, well, in this particular case, there is an added issue. But generally, what you do to integrate people in the organization is to create groups that, intercultural groups, that start by understanding each other's culture, talking it themselves, and sharing their common culture. It's called cultural mapping. So in a very relaxed way, people in a group say, we live this way, we do that way. So it's so they can learn how they live, how they react, what have you. And then they advance into looking for common interests they have, and then for what they can contribute from the different knowledges or their different cultures to a common objective they want to reach. And that is the exercise that any group, inclusive group, has to do. In the case of Ukrainians, let's say a little bit more, because there is a deep feeling, both on the sides of the Ukrainian that are under this terrible situation, and on the side of the countries that is integrating them, that of course has to make an effort to understand and to understand the situation they have. But in any group, to integrate, you do a cultural mapping, you do what we call a pointing, and then you create common issues and common objectives and contribute, so that people then know how to contribute with the positive attitudes and talents they can have.
Now, before we move on, let me just tell you that this conference is being streamed live, so we can request from all of you, both from people that are actually present and those who are watching us online, to send your thoughts, your ideas, your comments, any questions that may actually help us move on with this discussion, because I know that Ms. Kazanova is really looking forward to that, and that was a promise that I made to you. So we can have some input from our viewers as well. Now, you are actually the author of a book called The Power of Difference.
Yes.
So being different, is it so powerful? Is it a disadvantage? Is it a benefit? What is it about?
Well, being different is the nature of humanity. It's not something that one chooses to do. It's something that one, I don't know. Here, if anybody here has more than 2 children or 4 children, you have large families. Anybody that has a large family or even over 2 children know that they are diverse, that they are very different. and they come from the same father, the same mother, the same way of bringing them up, the same everything. So you would say that you can clown your children. I have 8, and I assure you that they are simply, totally, absolutely different. There are 8 worlds in themselves, so they couldn't be more different. So it's amazing. So if you understand that, and that's a family that go together, it depends on how you manage your company. If you manage it as a family, if you manage it in a more technical way, anyhow, you have to take into account that the company is made up of people, not of walls. It's people that make up the company. And those people have to be included, have to be contribute, and have to be part of the event and of the development. We did, and this is an appendix, we did, as an institute, we did a research once, and it showed that 73% of the workers of any organization do not know exactly what the organization does or how it contributes to its environment. Now, that is very sad, because you go into the organization, spend 8 hours there and leave. That is not contributing almost anything to and that is not contributing to you.
Does this mean that they do not share the same goals, the same objectives? Because if you do work for an organization but you don't know what it does, then you probably have your own agenda. How can you be included in that? How can someone come, from the top and say, we all need to work for this particular reason, and what you do is actually excluding yourself from becoming part of this company?
Exactly. So what we have to do is these groups of innovation, of inclusion, which are these groups, as I told you, the first thing you have to do is a cultural mapping, a pointing, and an inclusion. And that is the way to include people into the organization, to actually have them share the common objective, and then invite them. If they don't share the common objective, they can look for somewhere else, but you need people that share your common objectives and are ready then to define what are their talents that they can contribute to that common objective. Even if they're different in many ways, even if they speak different languages, they have different beliefs, they have disability, or they have other sexual orientation. That's the same. I mean, that is not the important thing. The important thing is what they can contribute to the organization. And they can contribute if they have something different to give. Otherwise, your organization is not going to be innovative. Organizations that are not innovative will not be sustainable into the future. Little less in the environment we have at present that is of an enormous fast change. Enormous fast change. I just want to recall you that humanity in the past 100 years have gone from horseback riding to Mars. In 100 years. 4 generations. That is stunning. So, but what we have ahead is still faster. How are we going to absorb the speed of change? We have to be very inclusive to be able to contribute and include the rest of your people, at least I can say the rest of humanity, but the rest of the people to belong together and make of an organization, whether it's public or private, a very efficient organization in which people participate, in which people belong and share common objectives, even if they are different, because they are different.
Ms. Kazanova, what do you think are the most important key traits or factors that need to be taken into consideration to have a diverse and inclusive community as a whole? Because education is not something that we all share. There are many millions of people around the world that do not have the opportunity to go to school, to study, so they are already the disadvantaged people. But then again, we all live in a global community, and having diversity and inclusion policies applied doesn't necessarily help. You see where I'm coming from? the key factors that need to be taken into consideration in order for these policies to work. So would education be one of those?
Well, the key factors of any organization, I think that is for the organization and the leaders of the organization, because the organization is nothing without its leaders and its workforce. These leaders have to have set a very clear objective, so they know where they are going and where all their people that contribute in the advance of that objectives have very clear objective of what I contribute and what is the positioning of the organization, whether it's quality, whether it's different countries, whether it's innovating in technology, whether it's contributing to what they want to have a very clear objective so that people can include themselves and share that objectives, and then contribute with their talent, if they have a talent, to share that objective. So that is a basic thing. Then, of course, companies have to set up mechanisms. It's not only declaring this company manages diversity, because we have 50% women on decision-making decisions. That is not the miracle response. First of all, those 50% women have to have the talent. Otherwise, we are not doing a favor
So
to you.
it's not only the percentage that you need to actually adopt, it's who you actually include and why you include them as well.
Exactly.
It does make a difference whether they belong to the LGBTQI community or because they are women or men.
Or they're older or younger. I mean, it doesn't matter. What matters is the capability, the talent, the contribution, and the belonging. And no matter what age, what you need to have is those factors that belong and share in the organization with, then share a common issue, a common objective. And of course, there are mechanisms inside the organization to get going all the time so that this happens. And that is diversity, inclusion.
Well, actually, this is easier said than done, because you
Yes.
might actually want to be successful in the percentages, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're successful in the inclusion and diversity policies that you apply. So, do you think that for these policies to be applied, they need to be enforced? Can they actually be applied because the organization needs to do so and is willing to do so? Or does it need to be a penalty for those companies that do not actually adopt those policies?
No, it has to be voluntary. The company wants to operate that way. You have to be sincere, otherwise you don't get anywhere. You don't convince anybody. You're not a leader. A leader has to have the commitment of people that follow him. Decision makers in the company have to be leaders. People that accompany and make the company real and reach its objectives have to share those objectives and have to be very sincere in those objectives and share them as their own. And that is inclusion. Why is it inclusion? Because we're all different. That's all there is to it. We're all different, and that's the only thing we have to keep in mind. There's this dimension of inclusion and leveraging the contributions that turns a company into a successful and sustainable organization through constant innovation.
How far do you think we are from actually achieving this goal, or just getting to a higher percentage, both as a whole? Let's talk about your country, for example. How would you compare this to any other country in terms of diversity and inclusion policies? Where do we stand, and how far do you think we are from actually reaching a point where we say that, you know, we are pretty good right now?
Well, we have to go back to the ancestral culture of the countries. For example, Spain is a country where there is a reluctance to change. So if it is a natural reluctance to change, of course, organizations take longer.
This applies here as well, I'm afraid.
Well, I don't know Greece, but Spain, I can assure you, it has a reluctance to change. It wants to do again what was done 40 years ago or 60 years ago. But with that, of course, you have to learn what was done, but not to do it, because the environment has changed. So if there is something you cannot do, is repeat a policy that was, even if it was successful 40 years ago, now, of course, it's not going to be successful because the environment is so extremely different. So it depends on the culture of the country, of its reluctance or its acceptance of change. For example, the country that accepts more change is the United States, because it really has no other history behind. It's a country made of immigrants, as you know, of European immigrants at the beginning, and then some Asian came in and what happened. But it's still a nation of immigrants. And, well, people know each other, and your next door neighbor is from Afghanistan, and the other one is from South America, and the other one. And it's natural in the United States not to come from the same country, because nobody, well, comparatively, not everybody's born in the United States.
Isn't that, though, part of the nation's identity, though? Because the United States, they come from all walks of life, and that's why they are called United States, as opposed to the European countries where you have your own national identity, you have your own language, you have your culture, your history, which is unique compared to other countries.
Exactly. So the marvelous thing that the European Union is doing, and is doing it consciously, is to look for agree on common objectives of these 27 countries that have had very diverse cultures and histories and conflicts for the past millenniums. But today we all share a common objectives, and we are all prepared to advance in giving our contribution to stay, because it's the only way to have a power in the world, is to stay together. And that I think we understand. To be someone in the world today, we cannot be alone as we were before, each country by itself. That we understand. So it's an amazing process. And I think that if I may send a message, because I feel very committed, I think that one of the objectives, or the main objective of the charters, is to promote this policy of respect for differences, having common objectives, and move the country into a sustainable development.
We actually live in an era that we have the Diversity Charter, which has been signed by many companies, both in Greece and abroad as well. My question is, though, do the companies actually need to sign this Diversity Charter and adopt it just because they need to put another tick on their agenda? Or does this actually work as a conduit into adopting and applying those diversity policies and putting it into effect?
Absolutely. During the time we developed the project for the DG5, continuing the diversity journey, we researched the major organizations, corporations in the European Union at the moment, and only 63% of them had any notion about diversity. The SMEs, we found out that they only had a 5% awareness of diversity, which was extremely sensitive and extremely dramatic, because in the European Union, 99% of the companies are SMEs, and they give jobs to 73% of the employees. So 73% of the working population were in organizations that didn't have a clue about diversity and inclusion, where Europe is very diverse because we can move freely all over the European Union. And besides the fact that we are all different altogether. So then we did also a very important research in innovation, and we developed mechanisms for innovation. It was very interesting years, and I am very fortunate in having participated in that. Then we created a diversity charter in this way that we have it right now. We thought, because It was tested in France. It was tested in France, and in France it had a great success. Companies didn't feel alone, but companies united in a common way of managing organizations, of reaching objectives, of handling the diverse features of human resources, of people, so that people feel better in their labor life and not so independent and dependent on having to go for a salary. We want people to go to a company and share objectives and contribute. And it has been a very interesting process, and I'm very glad to see that it has flourished.
Now we're actually coming up to the end of our very interesting discussion. So if you were actually asked to give us a message on what lies ahead for businesses and societies to achieve a fully inclusive and accepting environment, what would that be?
Well, the first thing decision makers in the organization is to be convinced that this is a policy that can make them grow, to be very convinced, and therefore learn and be assessed in all the mechanisms to really develop the inclusion of everybody in the organization, and to leverage and find out and detect their contributions. The contribution, if the organization is open, people come up and say, what I can do is this, even if they're in another department. And you would be amazed of how people in other departments have talents that can contribute in other projects of the organization. The first thing is the basic belief that inclusion develops innovation and sustainability. And then the mechanisms are there. And well, if you want mechanisms, you can buy the book, and I give you the entire process of developing. But there are many organizations that can give each other their contribution. And the diversity charters are a wonderful space in which organizations share their experience. You share the experience with others, those will copy it or will adapt it and come back again. And this is why we have a charter, not for people and organizations to feel all by themselves, but to share their experiences and grow and become more forceful and help the country. Thank you for being here.
So if I get this right, it's not a point of actually being politically correct, but there is a very deep essence to adopting the diversity and inclusion policies within the corporation, within the business that you work for, in order to achieve the best outcome and grow even better, grow even bigger.
Well, let's always think that diversity and inclusion is a social imperative, because it's socially correct to respect people and to give people their best. It is economic imperative, because organizations that develop diversity and inclusion have better results. And it's a legal imperative, because as you know, from 1911, the DG Justice declared that it was illegal to discriminate. So it is an imperative.
Ms. Kazanova, it's been a pleasure having you here, and I personally found out more today than I have actually found out all these years about diversity issues. We just want to thank you very much on behalf of the KIAN as well for the diversity conference that is actually taking place today. And we just hope to hear from you again. You have come a long way, but you have given us your lights, your insights as to what diversity means and how we can apply this. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here.